In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use a Bastion host to connect to EC2 instances in a private subnet. And so at the moment, this is what our network diagram looks like. We currently have an EC2 instance that is in a public subnet. And we've installed Windows on that EC2 instance, and we've connected to it a few times. But now we're going to actually create an EC2 instance in our private subnet. And because it's in the private subnet, we are not going to be able to connect to it. So I'm out here on a computer on the internet. If I want to connect to this privately addressed EC2 instance, I cannot do that because it's got a private IP address. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to connect through the internet to the public EC2 instance. And then we're going to jump from that EC2 instance into this one. And we've configured the security groups and the network ACLs to allow this already. And later in this course, we'll take a deeper look at security groups and network ACLs. But let's just assume that those are all configured properly at this point. So step one, let's create an EC2 instance in my private subnet. Okay, so here we are at the EC2 dashboard. I'm going to launch an instance. And I'm just going to call this private EC2. We're going to go through this relatively quickly. This is going to be an Amazon Linux EC2 instance. And we're just going to go with the T3 micro. Going to use the same key pair. And here's the important part. We are going to edit our network settings. And we're going to place this in the private subnet. And so this EC2 instance is not going to get a public IP address. And then I'm just going to select an existing security group. I'm going to choose the default security group. And remember, this default security group is allowing all traffic within the security group. So as long as the other EC2 instance also has an interface in the security group, it should be able to communicate with it. And that's really it. We're just going to go ahead and launch this instance. And once the instance is done, we're just going to try to connect to it from the Windows server that is in the public subnet. So let's go back to instances here. Here's my public Windows EC2 instance. And I'm just going to go ahead and click connect and download the RDP file for this because the address is now changed. I'm going to get a new RDP file. And using that RDP file, I'll connect up to my Windows EC2 instance that is in my public subnet. Okay, so now we're connected to the public subnet EC2 instance. I'm just going to launch PowerShell. And we're just going to use PowerShell to just see if we can communicate with the private instance at all. So let's go back to the AWS console. Let's go back to instances. And here is my private EC2 instance. And so it's not completely up and running yet. Let's hit refresh here and see if we can find out the IP address of this EC2 instance. There's the private IP, 10.1.1.132. As you can see, it doesn't have a public IP. So that's what we're going to try. And I'm not going to bother trying to connect to it with SSH because we would have to import the key pair in order to do so. And I'm just going to try to ping the private IP address of this EC2 instance. And let's see if this traffic actually gets through. Yep, it's working just fine. Now, like I mentioned, I'm not going to bother trying SSH because what I would need to do in order to get SSH working is I would have to get the key pair for this EC2 instance and import it into this EC2 instance of my public subnet to allow it to connect. So I'm not going to go through the effort of making that happen. I just wanted to show you basically the concept here that we can connect to an instance in a public subnet. We can put it in the same security group, or we could just set up our security group rules to make this work. But what I've done here is I've gone ahead and put both of these EC2 instances in the same security group. And remember, my route tables have that local route. So if I'm trying to communicate with an EC2 instance that's in the same VPC, I know that the routing is going to be there. And here's just a quick look at the security group that is applied to both of these instances. You can see here it's allowing all traffic on all ports as long as the traffic originates from a source that is part of this security group. So because both EC2 instances are part of this security group, they are allowed to pass all traffic between each other. Now, in real life, I might end up putting some more restrictive rules on these security groups for these private instances to protect them better, just in case the public instance gets compromised somehow. But for the purposes of this demo, just allowing all the traffic within that security group is the easiest way to make this happen.